A mission born from crisis. On the night of April 24, 1980, deep inside the Iranian desert, the United States launched one of the most complex and daring rescue missions in its history. The objective was simple in theory, but extraordinarily dangerous in reality: to rescue 52 American hostages held in the heart of Tehran. The mission was called Operation Eagle Claw. It would involve elite special forces, long-range helicopters, transport aircraft, covert refueling operations, and precise timing across thousands of miles. Instead, it ended in failure, fire, and explosion, claiming the lives of 8 American servicemen and forever changing how the United States conducted military operations. To understand why Operation Eagle Claw failed, we must first understand the crisis that made it necessary: the roots of the Iranian Revolution. For decades before 1979, Iran had been one of America's closest allies in the Middle East. The country was ruled by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a monarch backed strongly by the United States and Western powers. The Shah pursued rapid modernization and maintained strong ties with Washington, but his rule was deeply controversial. Many Iranians viewed him as a Western puppet, an authoritarian ruler, a symbol of corruption and inequality. Political opposition was crushed by the Shah's secret police, known as SAVAK, which was notorious for surveillance, imprisonment, and torture. Over time, public anger grew, especially among religious leaders, students, and the working class. Ayatollah Khomeini and the fall of the Shah. At the center of the opposition was Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a powerful religious leader who condemned the Shah's rule and Western influence. Khomeini was exiled for years, but his influence continued to spread through sermons, recordings, and underground networks. By late 1978, massive protests had erupted across Iran. The Shah's government collapsed under pressure. In January 1979, the Shah fled Iran. In February 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini returned triumphantly and established the Islamic Republic of Iran. The revolution fundamentally transformed Iran's political system and its relationship with the United States. The Shah in exile and the spark of the hostage crisis. After fleeing Iran, the Shah moved between several countries. In October 1979, he was allowed to enter the United States for medical treatment. This decision proved to be explosive. Many Iranians believed the Shah would never be put on trial for his crimes and feared the United States was plotting to restore him to power. Anti-American sentiment surged. The U.S. Embassy in Tehran became a powerful symbol of foreign interference. November 4, 1979, the U.S. Embassy seized. On November 4, 1979, a group of Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. They overran the compound and took 66 American diplomats and staff hostage. The students called themselves Muslim student followers of the Imam's line. They claimed they were acting to prevent another U.S.-backed coup similar to the CIA-led overthrow of Iran's prime minister in 1953. While some hostages were later released, 52 Americans remained captive. What began as a student protest quickly became an international crisis. Life inside captivity. The hostages were blindfolded, interrogated, and moved frequently. Some were held in solitary confinement. Others were threatened with execution. Psychological pressure was constant. For the hostages, time blurred into months of uncertainty. For the American public, the crisis became a daily reminder of humiliation and powerlessness. Nightly news broadcasts counted the days of captivity. The number kept rising. President Carter under pressure. At the time, President Jimmy Carter was in the final year of his presidency. The hostage crisis dominated his administration. Carter pursued diplomatic solutions, negotiations through intermediaries, economic sanctions, appeals to international organizations. But nothing worked. Iran's new revolutionary government was fragmented, unpredictable, and hostile. As the months passed, public frustration in the United States grew intense. Calls for decisive action became louder. Why a rescue mission was considered. By early 1980, it became clear that diplomacy alone might not secure the hostages' release. Military options, once considered too risky, were now being seriously evaluated. But rescuing hostages from Tehran was unlike any previous operation. The challenges were immense. The hostages were spread across multiple locations. Tehran was heavily populated and hostile. U.S. forces had limited intelligence. The distance from U.S. bases was enormous. Still, pressure mounted to do something. President Carter authorized planning for a possible rescue mission. The state of U.S. Special Operations in 1980, at the time, the United States did not have a unified Special Operations Command. Elite units existed, but they were scattered across different branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps. Each branch had its own command structure, training standards, and communication systems. Joint operations on this scale were rare and untested. Operation Eagle Claw would require unprecedented coordination between services. This lack of integration would later prove critical. The birth of Operation Eagle Claw. Military planners began designing a rescue plan that relied on secrecy, speed, and surprise. The mission would involve long-range helicopter insertion from aircraft carriers, a hidden desert staging area inside Iran, a covert nighttime approach to Tehran, a rapid extraction of hostages. The operation was given the code name Eagle Claw. Only a small number of officials knew the full details. Failure was considered a real possibility, but inaction was no longer acceptable. A mission against time. As planning progressed, intelligence reports warned of growing risks: increased Iranian security, political instability, poor weather patterns over Iran. Every delay increased the danger to the hostages. President Carter faced an impossible choice: continue waiting and risk losing credibility, or approve a dangerous mission with no guarantee of success. In April 1980, Carter gave the final authorization. The rescue mission would go forward. End of Part 1. Operation Eagle Claw was born from revolution, humiliation, and political pressure. But the most difficult part was yet to come. In Part 2, we will examine the detailed mission plan, the aircraft and helicopters involved, the secret desert landing site known as Desert 1, and how a carefully planned operation began to unravel even before reaching Tehran. Part 2. From concept to operational plan. By early 1980, the United States faced an unprecedented challenge. Rescuing hostages from the center of Tehran would require a mission unlike anything attempted before. Planners had to solve multiple problems at once: how to secretly insert forces into Iran, how to reach Tehran without detection, how to extract hostages from a hostile capital, and how to escape Iranian airspace safely. The result was a multi-stage plan involving long-range aircraft, helicopters, covert refueling points, and precise timing. The mission would be executed entirely at night. The basic mission concept. Operation Eagle Claw was designed in 5 major phases. 1. Insert helicopters into Iran. 2. Establish a secret desert refueling site. 3. Move special forces closer to Tehran. 4. Assault the hostage locations. 5. Extract everyone safely. Each phase depended on the success of the previous one. There was very little margin for error. If any major component failed, the mission would have to be aborted. The aircraft involved. The operation required a wide range of aircraft from different branches of the U.S. military. RH-53D Sea Stallion helicopters, operated by the U.S. Navy. Chosen for their long range and heavy lift capability, 8 helicopters were assigned to the mission. These helicopters would fly from the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz, enter Iranian airspace, and land at the desert staging site. At least 6 helicopters were required for the mission to continue. C-130 Hercules transport aircraft. The U.S. Air Force provided multiple variants of the C-130. MC-130 Combat Talon, navigation and insertion. EC-130, fuel storage and refueling support. These aircraft would fly from Oman, land secretly in the Iranian desert, refuel the helicopters, transport Delta Force operators, Delta Force and assault teams. The hostage rescue itself would be conducted by Delta Force, an elite U.S. Army Special Operations unit. At the time, Delta Force was relatively new and highly secretive. Their mission: infiltrate Tehran, assault the embassy and other holding sites, secure the hostages, prepare them for extraction. Supporting units included Army Rangers, U.S. Air Force combat controllers, CIA assets on the ground, Desert 1, the secret staging site. The heart of the operation was a remote landing site in the Iranian desert, codenamed Desert 1. It was chosen because it was isolated, it appeared unused, it allowed aircraft to land undetected. In reality, Desert 1 was not as empty as planners believed. It was located near a dirt road used occasionally by local vehicles. This detail would later prove significant. Phase 1, insertion into Iran. On April 24, 1980, the mission officially began. That evening, C-130 aircraft departed Oman. Helicopters launched from the USS Nimitz in the Arabian Sea. The helicopters faced an extremely long flight, over 600 miles, at night, in hostile airspace, with no opportunity for rescue if something went wrong. From the very beginning, conditions were far from ideal. The helicopters encounter a sandstorm. Shortly after entering Iranian airspace, the helicopters encountered a massive haboob, a dense desert sandstorm. Visibility dropped dramatically. Pilots struggled to maintain formation. Fine sand infiltrated engines, instruments, and filters. Some helicopters were forced to slow down. Others became separated from the group. The mission timeline began to slip. Mechanical failures begin. One helicopter experienced serious mechanical issues and was forced to turn back toward the carrier. Another helicopter landed in the desert after instrument failures made continued. Flight unsafe. By the time the remaining helicopters approached Desert 1, the mission was already in trouble. Only 6 helicopters were now still flying, the absolute minimum required. There was no room left for error. Arrival at Desert 1. The first C-130 aircraft landed at Desert 1 and secured the site. As planned, runway lights were set up, perimeter security was established, but unexpected problems immediately emerged. Civilian bus unexpectedly drove through the area and was stopped by U.S. forces. Shortly after, a fuel truck appeared and was destroyed to prevent it from alerting authorities. The presence of civilians confirmed what planners had underestimated. Desert 1 was not truly isolated. Helicopters land, more bad news. As helicopters finally arrived at Desert 1, another serious problem was discovered. One helicopter showed signs of hydraulic system failure. Maintenance crews assessed the damage and concluded the aircraft was not mission capable. This reduced the number of usable helicopters to 5. The mission required 6, the abort decision. With only 5 operational helicopters remaining, commanders faced a critical decision. Proceeding would leave no margin for further failures, risk stranding forces deep inside Iran. After intense discussion, the on-scene commander recommended aborting the mission. President Carter, monitoring events from Washington, approved the decision. Operation Eagle Claw was officially aborted. The priority now became safe withdrawal. The most dangerous moment, withdrawal. Ironically, the most dangerous part of the mission was still ahead. Aircraft and helicopters were parked close together in darkness. Dust and confusion. Rotor wash from helicopters created blinding clouds of sand. Communication between crews was difficult. Time pressure was intense. Everyone wanted to leave as quickly as possible. The fatal collision. As one RH-53D helicopter attempted to reposition for departure, tragedy struck. The helicopter drifted unexpectedly in the dust-filled darkness. Its rotor struck a parked EC-130 fuel aircraft. The impact ruptured fuel tanks instantly. A massive fireball erupted. Both aircraft were engulfed in flames within seconds. Loss of life at Desert 1. 8 American servicemen were killed. 5 Air Force crew members, 3 Marine helicopter crew members. Others narrowly escaped the burning wreckage. The explosion illuminated the desert night, an unmistakable sign that the mission had catastrophically failed. There was no time to recover bodies or classified equipment. Survival now meant immediate evacuation. Emergency evacuation. Remaining personnel boarded the C-130 aircraft and departed Desert 1. Helicopters were abandoned where they sat. Sensitive equipment was destroyed as much as possible. Within minutes, U.S. forces were gone. Operation Eagle Claw was over. The world learns of the failure. Within hours, Iranian authorities discovered the wreckage. Images of burned American aircraft spread rapidly across the world. For the United States, the mission was a national embarrassment. For Iran, it was a propaganda victory. For the families of the fallen servicemen, It was a devastating loss. End of Part 2. Operation Eagle Claw had failed before reaching Tehran, before reaching the hostages. But its consequences were only beginning. In Part 3, we will examine the political fallout in the United States, the fate of the hostages, investigations into what went wrong, and how this failure transformed U.S. Special Operations forever. Final part. A silent desert at dawn. As dawn broke over the Iranian desert on April 25, 1980, the wreckage at Desert 1 told a devastating story. Burned aircraft, twisted metal, and the remains of a mission that had ended in tragedy. 8 American servicemen were dead. The hostages in Tehran were still captive, and the United States had just experienced one of the most painful military failures in its modern history. Operation Eagle Claw was over, but its consequences were only beginning. Iran's discovery and global reaction. Within hours of the U.S. withdrawal, Iranian forces arrived at Desert 1. They found abandoned American helicopters, destroyed C-130 aircraft, classified equipment left behind. Iranian media quickly broadcast images of the wreckage to the world. For Iran's revolutionary government, this was proof that the United States was no longer invincible. For American allies, it raised serious concerns about U.S. military readiness. For the American public, it was a shock. President Carter addresses the nation. Later that day, President Jimmy Carter addressed the nation. He took full responsibility for the mission. Carter stated clearly that the failure was not due to the bravery or skill of the men involved, but to the risks inherent in such a complex operation. The speech was honest, restrained, and somber, but the political damage was severe. The hostage crisis had already weakened Carter's presidency. Operation Eagle Claw made that weakness impossible to ignore. The fate of the hostages. Despite the failed rescue attempt, the hostages were not harmed in retaliation. Iran dispersed them to multiple locations, increasing security and isolation. Negotiations continued quietly through international intermediaries. Finally, after 444 days in captivity, the hostages were released on January 20, 1981. The same day, Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as President of the United States. Operation Eagle Claw had failed, but the crisis eventually ended through diplomacy, investigating the failure. Almost immediately, the U.S. military launched a comprehensive investigation. The findings were brutally honest. Operation Eagle Claw did not fail because of one single mistake. It failed because of systemic problems. Key failure number 1, lack of joint command. At the time, the U.S. military had no unified Special Operations Command. Each service branch operated independently. Separate planning, separate training, separate communication systems. This made coordination slow, confusing, and inefficient. Eagle Claw required seamless cooperation, but the structure simply did not exist. Key failure number 2, helicopter selection. The RH-53D. Helicopters were powerful but not designed for long-range desert operations. They were naval helicopters adapted for a mission far outside their normal role. Sand infiltration caused engine degradation, instrument failures, reduced reliability. There were no backup rescue options once helicopters failed. Key failure number 3, inadequate training. The mission rehearsals were limited and incomplete. Full-scale training under realistic conditions was not possible due to secrecy. Many crews had never trained together before. Critical procedures, such as refueling helicopters in desert conditions at night, were never fully rehearsed. Key failure number 4, intelligence gaps. Intelligence about Desert 1 was incomplete. Planners believed the site was isolated. It was not. Civilian traffic passed through the area. Weather intelligence underestimated the risk of severe sandstorms. Small intelligence gaps became major operational hazards. Key failure number 5, no margin for error. The plan required near-perfect execution. 6 helicopters were the minimum needed. There was no redundancy, no flexibility, no recovery plan if conditions changed. Once failures began, abort became inevitable. The human cost. 8 men lost their lives at Desert 1. Their names are remembered as heroes who volunteered for one of the most dangerous missions imaginable. They died not because of cowardice or incompetence, but because the system around them failed. Operation Eagle Claw left a permanent mark on the families of those servicemen. A turning point for U.S. Special Operations. Out of failure came transformation. Operation Eagle Claw became the catalyst for sweeping reform in the U.S. military. Creation of Joint Special Operations Command. One of the most important outcomes was the creation of Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, and later U.S. Special Operations Command, USACOM. These organizations unified elite forces under a single command structure. Joint planning, joint training, and joint execution became standard. Improved training and doctrine. After Eagle Claw, full mission rehearsals became mandatory. Realistic environmental training increased. Inter-service communication improved dramatically. Special operations units began training together regularly, long before missions were launched. Aircraft and technology advancements. The failure also accelerated investment in long-range special operations aircraft, better navigation systems, improved night vision technology, specialized helicopters for covert missions. Future missions would rely on purpose-built platforms, not improvised solutions. Lessons applied. Operation Urgent Fury and beyond. The lessons of Eagle Claw were applied in later operations. Grenada, 1983. Panama, 1989. The Gulf War, 1991. Most notably, they shaped the success of later hostage rescue and special operations missions around the world. The shadow of Eagle Claw. Decades later, Operation Eagle Claw is still studied in military academies. It is taught not as a story of failure, but as a lesson in humility, planning, and reform. It reminds commanders that complexity multiplies risk. Joint operations demand unity, and preparation can never be assumed. A respectful legacy. While the mission failed, its legacy saved lives in the future. Modern U.S. Special Operations forces, respected and feared worldwide, were shaped directly by the lessons learned in the Iranian desert. Every successful joint operation since then carries the imprint of Eagle Claw. Final reflection. Operation Eagle Claw was born from crisis, driven by urgency, and ended in tragedy. But from its ashes emerged a stronger, more capable military structure. The cost was high. The lessons were painful, but the impact was permanent. In the silence of the desert at Desert One, the future of U.S. Special Operations was rewritten.